Yes, we're still on the second floor of the Physical Science Lecture Hall. I can't tell you, according to UCI officials, they don't believe there are any more protesters inside of this building. But as you can see, that encampment just grows smaller and smaller with every inch that law enforcement moves forward. I do want to echo what that professor was saying to Jory as she was being taken away into custody. The mayor of Irvine did tweet out within an hour. She tweeted, quote, "It's a shame that peaceful free speech protests are always responded to violence taking space on campus or in a building is not a threat to anyone. UCI leadership must do everything they can to avoid creating a violent scenario here. These are your students with zero weapons." Right now on your screen, you can see these students that remain here protesting. They're building or trying to rebuild a barricade or a barrier between them and law enforcement, but every so often law this barricade and these canopies are being put in front of them to separate the officers from that core group of students who do not know who they are, but from where we've been standing, I can tell you that they've held the line, have not budged one bit as officers moved in, and now these protesters around them are trying to kind of protect them by rebuilding this sort of barrier and putting things between them and law enforcement. I see some people on the other side of the barricade, but I don't know if we want to go in there. If you want to walk and talk and I'll just follow you, feel free. I want to just point out the vast difference between where Jory's standing and that core group of protesters that's rebuilding the barricade and moving stuff. And if we pan to the right here, you can kind of see the police line is still here right outside of the lecture science hall at UCI, but you see a quieter group of students who are just kind of onlooking and watching from afar. Most of the tensions are taking place in the core center of the squad. So you can see the fine line of officers, more officers kind of layered in as they move inch closer. But from where we're standing, you can see that officers are kind of wrapped around the squad from all directions, kind of moving in slowly. And of course, pushing out those who want to be pushed out peacefully and taking into custody those who are resisting. And here they're moving here again. So they're kind of just inching closer and closer where you kind of see they let people know that they're going to move in. And if they don't listen, they will, of course, will push back. But we'll keep monitoring this for you guys. All right. Are you talking to Jory or David Gonzalez? probably be like, here's the physical science hall, this is what they took over, and then we'll pan over and see like they've cleared all this. All right, you got it.
Or detainment so far. Some people giving up peacefully, others putting up a little bit of a scuffle, but one way or the other, they are being placed into zip ties and escorted away here. You can see they have reconstructed that barrier that was basically making up the encampment for the last 3 weeks. Now the remnants of that encampment are being used as a makeshift wall that's been constructed in the last 20 minutes to essentially barricade this crowd from those officers who are advancing on the quad. But it so far has not been much of a match. It really doesn't take much for those law enforcement officers to peel away at the pallets, tear away the barricades, and continue to clear the area here. But still, a huge show of force by law enforcement, also a very sizable crowd that is slowly dwindling. David? That's incredible. Yep. Box trucks, yep. Yep. Yeah, it's incredible, Colleen. You have that long line of law enforcement running entirely through the quad there. On one side, you have this unlawful assembly of unruly protesters, and then on the other side, you have a cleanup process that is already underway as facilities crews from UC Irvine are literally pulling up box trucks and taking all of those pallets and tents and makeshift furniture away. And so this is about the second or third truck that we've seen taking away all of the garbage, all of that trash that's being left behind, and as quickly as law enforcement clears the quad, they are clearing all of the trash that is being left behind. It's really something. Even in the case of UCLA last week, they cleared the courtyard, and then the next day, they cleaned it up in very, very quick fashion. But this is happening almost simultaneously as people are being detained and being dispersed. You have cleanup crews cleaning up this campus so they can get back to university business as soon as possible. Again, worth reiterating, class obviously was canceled earlier today. Everybody's being encouraged to work remotely tomorrow, but they want to get this campus back up and running and business as usual as soon as possible, and clearly you can see the evidence of that, guys. Yeah, and just to give you an idea, behind them So you have the police officers on the left there. To the right, you have the remaining protesters. And just to the right of them, you have onlookers who are basically watching from Roland Hall. Roland Hall, the building that you see on the right side of your screen there, that is the Physical Science, Finance, and Administration building. It's a sensitive building, as well as the rest of the buildings that you see here, which include the Physical Science Lecture Hall, which was occupied earlier this afternoon, as well as the Science and Energy the Science and Engineering building, which is also in this area. They chose this quad specifically because in their minds, in the opinion of these protesters, this is the school that is producing students who are being funneled into the quote-unquote war machine pipeline that they are protesting against. And so there's a lot of method and calculation that was included in the call to action by these protesters who called for activists to show up at campus this afternoon to take part in this escalated demonstration. Again, it has been a relatively peaceful protest for the last several weeks until earlier this afternoon when a call was sent out to escalate the situation, and that's exactly what we've seen happen, guys. It's shrinking, but it's shrinking so gradually and so slowly that you almost can't even tell. What's not happening is you don't see a lot of people going home. They're basically backing up. They're following the crowd. There's a mob mentality there. They're just kind of sticking with each other in groups, right? In the early part of police moving into this quad, the folks that decided enough was enough and they wanted to go home, they dispersed. So a large percentage of the protest went home in the early hours here this afternoon as the police showed up. The remaining protesters you see here are essentially riding this out, either to be detained peacefully or not peacefully, one or the other, and the rest of them just appear to be, waiting till the last minute to vacate the premises. So it's a combination of things between, protesters who are putting up a fight, peaceful protesters who are just trying to stick it out as long as they can, and then students who don't have anything to do with the protest, and they're basically just pulling out their cell phones and gathering this on video for social media. So there's kind of three different contingents of people here on the other side of this barricade, David. Actually, I'll open the window. A little fresh air. What do you see? Copy. Sure. So yeah, another person being detained here. Again, a rough estimate, David, I would say of a couple dozen people since we showed up this afternoon who we've seen being taken in with zip ties. Whether they're actually being placed under arrest or detained, it's hard to say which ones will be processed, but a bulk of them will be, and there will be probably vans pulling up at some point to take the rest away, as we've seen in other similar protests. And you can see what's been left behind here. Here's one of those buses, as a matter of fact, where it does look like they're either bringing in, these guys are just arriving. This is a new group of UC Irvine police officers who are being pulled into the parking lot. Here, we'll go ahead and tilt back into the courtyard there, and you can see that skirmish line still standing strong. They were easily able to advance on that makeshift wall, and you can see now those protesters using whatever they can at their disposal as shields, essentially, after some less lethal rounds were fired in their directions. They appeared to be rubber bullets, although that's impossible to confirm from up here just yet. But that's what it appeared to be as they advanced on that crowd. You heard in Jory's live shot there, they were being given the order to march 3 feet at a time, and that's exactly what they did. Everybody backed up. Some people put up a little fight, and then those are the ones that end up getting peeled away soonest. Now here you go again. Another 3 or 4 feet. The crowd moves back, and it continues. The cycle continues until eventually they will make their way through this entire crowd. Again, what's starting to happen, though, is the further west they go, they're kind of meshing with the other onlookers who are just trying to catch a glimpse, but even though they may not be partaking in this protest, they are still vulnerable to this dispersal order, which has been given, and that's the order that's being executed here. So really, at some point, it doesn't matter what your cause is here this afternoon. Everybody needs to go home, or they will be placed under arrest, and that's essentially the trouble here, is that you have such a large crowd here who refuses to obey that order. It's going to take some time before they make their way through this entire crowd and literally peel each person away one at a time into zip ties, and again, the cycle continues, guys. Yes. He says there's a drone above a helicopter. I don't know which helicopter he's looking at. There it is. Towards the building. It's flying. Oh, it's right over that building on the top left. Up, 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 up. Yep, right there. You got it. It was a drone. A white drone. Hey, yeah, David, if you can hear me, it looks like a large group of people running away from that skirmish line. What prompted that? Hard to say. It wouldn't be the first time if less lethal rounds were fired in their direction. That may very well be what prompted that little hustle there. You saw a large group running in the opposite direction of those police officers, but you can see them continuing to advance here. Every few minutes, they'll walk up a few steps at a time, getting their way further towards the west here and clearing out this quad. Right now, you can see them holding firm with that skirmish line, not letting anybody behind it, and there really is not a whole lot of debris left in their way as there was earlier as they were continuing to reconstruct that barricade. They are pretty much out of materials, so at this point there's not much in the way of those law enforcement officers from continuing to advance and slowly detain those individuals. You can see what remains of that encampment is now essentially piles of trash that are already in the process of being boxed up and loaded into box trucks to be hauled away. And that process is happening immediately as the quad is being cleared here, but not without very, very tense moments. This unruly crowd taunting the officers, screaming and yelling, and occasionally, as they try and move in on that crowd, you see them occasionally, again, once in a blue, they will be forced to use less lethal weapons, guys. Guys, just so you know, no ICOM. Well, I got to tell you, when we heard that, that caught our attention right away. Now, most likely, he was talking about the police helicopter that may have flown underneath one of those drones. That is extremely dangerous. It's hard to overstate just how dangerous that is. And what that tells me is that that was not a law enforcement drone. That means somebody down there in that crowd, and maybe even more than one person down there, are in control of drones in the area. We saw that as well at UCLA just a couple of weeks ago. But in this case, when you hear about drones flying over helicopters, that is about our worst nightmare up here in Air 7 HD. However, by all indications, we can tell you that it looks like it may have been a law enforcement helicopter that was flying much lower than us up here that may have flown underneath that drone. But we saw that white DJI drone flying right over the crowd. It does appear that these are all protester drones. We have not seen anything yet that looks like it may be related to a law enforcement drone. Just to kind of clear the air there, but it's something certainly that is capturing everybody's attention whenever you hear about a drone flying in the midst of helicopters. What they're doing with that drone is a whole other question. But in any case, you can see that that skirmish line of officers continuing to advance on the crowd, and every time they do so, the crowd gets more agitated and starts, in some cases, even running away when they hear those rubber bullets being fired, David. Copy. Double box. Yep. Yeah, once again, David, another standoff here. The skirmish line has been reestablished. The protesters standing their ground with makeshift shields. And what's going to happen here, almost inevitably, is those police officers are going to advance another 2, 3, maybe 4 feet. And if those people don't back up, they'll start using those rubber bullets. And then what we've noticed is the occasional stampede that follows. And you start to see everybody running in the opposite direction, which in and of itself, by the way, can become a very dangerous situation when you have 100 people trying to flee the area and running over each other. You can see that's the largest group that we can see right here. The crowd has stayed about the same size for the last 20 or 30 minutes, maybe dwindling ever so slightly. Occasionally you'll see somebody being peeled out, resisting arrest as they try and take them into custody. But law enforcement doing a great job of methodically moving through this courtyard as peacefully as possible without, trying to use as little force as possible, I should say. But that right there is a great shot of what remains of the encampment. The encampment is basically gone. And the only thing left are cleanup crews who are already getting at it and taking and hauling away all of that garbage. Panning back up, you can see that crowd on the other side of that skirmish line remains very volatile, very vocal, and highly outraged as they continue to taunt those officers. And once again, you can see a drone entering the frame here that does not appear to be a law enforcement drone. Absolutely. I mean, fortunately, we have not experienced anything close today to just a couple of weeks ago compared to the UCLA protest, when we were getting actual threats via social media from people in the crowd who were operating drones. In this situation, that has not happened, but the mere presence of those drones over this protest is highly, highly concerning for us as well as law enforcement, obviously. Yeah, and another thing to point out here as we look at that building, that's going to be Rowland Hall, I believe. It is Rowland Hall. That is an example of people who remain inside of these buildings. Now remember, UC Irvine has ordered everybody to evacuate these buildings. But there are a lot of people, students, faculty, professors, and others who remain steadfast and not only disobeying law enforcement on the ground, but staying in these buildings despite the orders by the administration. And that is also cause for concern, as they, in many cases, are just watching from the windows what's going on below them. But law enforcement has a real problem if there are people in these windows and in other vantage points, such as those flying the drones, that are trying to interfere with this dispersal order. Thank you. Thank you. Widen out if you could. What's behind, up on top, to the top of the screen? Where does that go? That's the main courtyard, right? Copy. The last bus we saw was in this parking lot right here, Colleen. I'm not sure if they are. Look, there's a little booking station right there. So they're bringing folks over there to a little makeshift booking station and then placing them in to other vehicles. Now, there was a larger bus here earlier. That one has already left. I have not counted more than a couple of dozen so far, maybe a little bit more. Again, they've been happening very sporadically. Individuals being detained, walked away in zip ties. It tends to be the most resistant ones in that crowd who are peeled out of there, placed into zip ties, and then escorted away from the scene here. You know, it's so interesting because these protests, and the same situation was true just a couple weeks ago at UCLA, but these protests tend to take on a cyclical nature where you have these lulls in activity like you see right here. And if you look at it from this vantage point, it looks like a skirmish line, people standing still on the other side, and you would call it, oh, it looks like a peaceful protest. In actuality, the things that are being thrown and taunted on the other side of that skirmish line are not seen as peaceful activities by the law enforcement officers on the other side. And so at this point, it is no longer a peaceful protest. It is technically a unlawful assembly, and that's going to be what carries this line of skirmish officers all the way into Aldrich Park. I want to go ahead and widen out here and show you where this crowd ends up. As they make their way through these two buildings, law enforcement will continue to push the crowd between Rowland Hall and that building on your right into that grassy area. That is the inner circle, the inner ring they call it, of Aldrich Park. That is going to be a much more manageable area for law enforcement to surround the crowd that's left and then begin taking everybody into custody. Right now, it's a little bit difficult with those two buildings to really corner everybody, but you see the ring that law enforcement is kind of forming around this crowd to protect the entrance to the buildings, which is very important. We've already seen one building, at least one building, breached earlier this afternoon, and now you see they don't want a repeat of that. So that's Frederick Rhines Hall on the right, and law enforcement officers continuing to essentially push the crowd away from through the buildings and eventually away from the buildings into that open lawn in Aldrich Park. That is going to be a much more manageable crowd control situation for these law enforcement officers as the sun goes down. Guys? Great shot. Yeah, they're fortifying the entrances to the buildings, so they're protecting the entrance to the buildings, but the buildings and the ring of police officers are forcing that crowd to continue moving in this direction. Eventually down the steps. You can see already a couple of hundred protesters have been forced down the steps as they stampede away from the skirmish line, and all of them at some point here in the not too distant future are going to end up on that wide open lawn. And what that's going to do is allow law enforcement to form a complete circle around the remaining protesters and a really conducive situation in terms of taking people into custody. Nonetheless, you're seeing these scuffles break out, little punches being thrown, sometimes water bottles being thrown at the officers. You see other tools being thrown at those officers. The batons are out, the less lethal weapons are out, and the confrontation continues as these protesters retreat down those stairs. Yeah, David, that was the bus. That was the bus earlier that took a few people away, and now the bus is back, and they're loading that bus up once again. Now, I don't know if that bus was ever actually full at any point, but you can see the bus has returned there, and more detainees are being placed into that bus, and they will eventually be hauled away to be processed, most likely on trespassing charges, as has been the theme over the course of the last several weeks at the various university protests. So that's the booking van right there. We'll go ahead and widen out and show you the protesters moving back through those two buildings as that skirmish line progresses towards Aldrich Park. And unfortunately, the only obstacle now is the trees that you see in our way here as we try and catch a glimpse between the buildings. You can tell just from this shot right here, David and Colleen, that those police officers are starting to lose daylight, which is probably not ideal, but not a huge obstacle in any event. They will be able to provide enough light to finish the operation, especially if they move everybody into that open park area on that wide open lawn. But you can see a large contingent of demonstrators, upwards of 200, at least 200, that are steadfastly standing their ground and refusing to disperse. And it is a disconcerting sight, but little by little, it seems as though some of them are starting to peel off, and the ones that aren't are being peeled off forcefully by those officers. You know, David, I can't say for sure, but just an educated guess tells me that we're going to be ending up with everybody moving down the steps, which, by the way, just having that many people on a staircase like that, if there's another stampede down that staircase, that is a huge, huge hazard and a huge liability for Irvine police here. So I imagine we're going to see them as peacefully as possible start to move that crowd further down the stairs before they make any aggressive moves on this crowd. So ultimately, I think we're here for the duration until this entire crowd ends up in Aldrich Park on that big lawn. There you see police officers moving a few steps at a time, and now they're literally going to start moving down that staircase a few stairs at a time as they move this crowd slowly but methodically down the staircase into that courtyard. What's in the middle? In the middle of the circle. Yeah, medical supplies, yeah. Thank you. I wouldn't say that. Sure. Yep. Start tight and then widen out. I'm going to set the scene. Now, yeah, so it's kind of playing out almost exactly as we were describing earlier. So as they make their way finally to the bottom of the steps, you're going to see that crowd of officers start to disperse. They're going to maintain their line. They're not going to let anybody back up those stairs, but they're going to start to encircle the group, the large group that's moving past that fountain. Again, to give you an idea of where we are now, we're over Aldrich Park between Rowland Hall that you're looking at on the right and Rhines Hall near the top of your screen. That's Infinity Fountain at the bottom of those steps. And basically all of those cops are moving everybody now completely off the staircase, down to the fountain, past the fountain, where you can see a wide open lawn. This is Aldrich Park. It's the center of campus, and it gives these officers a wide open space to essentially have the opportunity, once they get everybody in that grass, to circle the group and allow whoever wants to leave, who wants to go away on that bus, will be detained, put into zip ties, and hauled away one by one. So that's gonna be how this essentially plays out here. What we don't see a lot of is a whole lot of resistance as those officers make their way further through the quad and now down the stairs. Sometimes you'll see a person here or there throw a bottle, put up a fight, they'll be arrested, but for the most part, as officers move forward, the protesters move backwards. And that's going to continue, I think, to the other side of this fountain. That's Infinity Fountain right there. They're going to move everybody past the fountain just like they did down the stairs, and then start to encircle the large group. They have the luxury of having plenty of officers to be able to do that, unless the crowd disperses on their own. That's always a possibility as well. But right now, I can tell you there are comfortably enough law enforcement officers on this campus to handle this crowd. That is not an issue. The numbers are in the favor of law enforcement, and I would say almost a 1-to-1 ratio, if not maybe a few more protesters than law enforcement, but plenty of law enforcement to handle a crowd of this size. And if we tilt up one more time you can see where the encampment has resided for the past 3 weeks is now completely cleared of people. Everybody is now gone. It is a full-scale cleanup effort going on in that courtyard, in that physical science quad, as facilities and maintenance crews sweep away and haul away the remaining debris and garbage left behind by this encampment. So the people are gone, the debris is being hauled away, and now law enforcement, with all the tools at their disposal to eventually bring this crowd to heel and hopefully take away as few people as possible, especially if they don't resist, unless they have to. And then, of course, they'll be off to that bus that you saw in that parking lot and eventually booked and processed, guys. Thank you. Yeah, Colleen, they have. They've moved everybody now off the stairs, past the fountain, and now they have the issue of keeping everybody who does not intend on going home in kind of one place. In order to form that circle, that perimeter, they're going to need them kind of condensed. And the nature of crowds tends to be that folks stick together. Now, if they disperse too widely, it becomes a little bit more difficult. But they have a lot of law enforcement here, and they have enough tools at their disposal that they can clear this lawn pretty easily. It's not necessarily a fast procedure. It could take some time, but they have the means and the wherewithal to do it. The one thing they don't want is anybody heading back up that staircase, and certainly they don't want anybody entering any of these buildings. That's the priority, and the rest of it is just executing that dispersal order and getting as many people to go home as possible. And whoever doesn't want to go home, they will be approached, they'll be encircled, and then they'll be taken into custody. You can see the crowd itself is stubbornly sitting in this grass and refusing to leave. And so this cycle of moving forward and encircling the groups, even if they splinter off into smaller groups, which is often the case, it's going to continue. It's going to continue in a pattern that could go well into the night, quite frankly. Thank you. Show me more police on the periphery. Who else is going to move in here? So you've got a couple of squads there. They're spreading out. Okay. Yep. 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 And then what else? Anything else? Further out? That's it. Okay.
一个人啊，不的是注意眼睛，李队员。稍后。普京总统在出访前接受媒体采访，特别提到了这些新闻。他说道：“我们每一次会面不仅是保持交流，而且还是双方都有最紧迫的关系，具有强效的交换。很显然，普京总统对于再次访华与习近平再次见面颇期待。”大国外交最前线，这里是北京人民大会堂共同直播间。今天上午，国家主席习近平在准备来华这个城市参访俄罗斯总统普京总统方式。现在距离欢迎仪式开始的时间越来越近，我们看到双方的陪同人员已经提前到达飞机上。那不然了，这次陪同访华的有俄罗斯第一副总理曼科夫的多位政府。 中共中央政治局委员、国务院副总理、中共中央政治局委员、国务院副总理、国务委员、发改委主任、教育部部长、工信部部长、交通运输部部长、商务部部长、文旅部部长、中国人民银行行长、外交部副部长、大使、能源局局长。
新闻秘书、驻华大使、新任防长、
这个我们的自然资源和生态部部长、
文化部长、
文化部部长，很高兴远东发展部部长、
财政部长、
金融部财政部部长、文艺
央行行长、
央行行长、局长。
季普钦科俄中事业家委员会主席吉里巴斯卡、
卢世友。
向中国人民解放军仪仗队列队完毕，请您检阅。
夏天了，现在开始收割小麦了。
У нас уже начались урожаи.
还好。
累死了。
谢谢。Thank you.
Спасибо. Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to the FCCJ. I'm your moderator today. I'm Andy Sharp from Nikkei Asia. So last month, a group of 5 Japanese lawmakers, 4 from the LDP, 1 from Ishin, visited the areas around the Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea. The first such inspection by members of parliament since, I believe, 2013. So today we have 2 of the members who went on that trip, and also the organizer of the trip, Mr. Professor Yamada, who I'll introduce you to shortly. During their visit to the Senkakus, the Japanese Coast Guard vessels there were warned by the Chinese Coast Guards not to encroach the islands, calling it an infringement and provocation by Japan. That was a statement by the Chinese embassy here in Tokyo. So as you know, the situation around the Senkaku, I don't probably need to explain anything from me, but first, today we're going to find out today why the lawmakers chose to make this visit at this time, the first in more than 10 years, and what happened on the trip, and anything else they would like to explain about the Senkaku Island situation. So, introducing our guests, just going in order, on my right is the organizer of the trip. It's Yoshihiko Yamada. He's a professor at the School of Marine Science and Technology, Department of Marine Science at Tokai University. And next to him is Tomomi Inada. She's currently the Executive Acting Secretary General in the LDP. And furthest away on my right is another LDP lawmaker in the upper house. It's Hiroshi Yamada. And at the end, as often is the case, our interpreter, Mary Joyce. So the lawmakers and the professor will give short speeches, and then we will open the floor to Q&A. Hiroshi Yamada, given his commitments in the diet this afternoon, will have to leave around 1:10 or so, just giving you some warning of that in advance. Okay, without further ado, Inada Sensei, will you start?
皆さんこんにちは。衆議院議員の稲田朋美です。今回私たちの議員連盟、名前は尖閣諸島の調査開発を進める会ですが、尖閣諸島の領海において調査したことについてお招きをいただきましてありがとうございます。
Hello, everybody. As introduced, my name is Inada Tomomi. I'm a member of the House of Representatives of Japan. Thank you for inviting us here today to discuss the survey which our parliamentary group accompanied. Our group is translated as the Senkaku Islands Research and Development Promotion Group, and the survey was conducted in the Japanese territorial waters of the Senkaku Islands recently.
私たちの議員連盟は令和2年に設立をされた自民党の議員による議員連盟です。当時、中国海警の武装船が連続100日を超えて不当な航行を続け、領海侵入も繰り返していたことから、領土、領海、領空を守るために何らかの行動を起こす必要があると考えて、この議員連盟を作りました。
So our parliamentary group is formed by Liberal Democratic Party members and was established in the second year of the Reiwa era, or 2020. This was at the time when armed vessels of the Chinese Coast Guard had been wrongfully navigating more than 100 days consecutively and repeatedly trespassing into our territorial waters. We therefore felt the need to form this parliamentary group as a way to take action to protect Japan's territorial land, water, and airspace.
この議員連盟の目的は、尖閣諸島の調査・開発のための議員立法をすることによって、国が尖閣諸島の環境調査や資源開発を推進するように促すものです。
And the objective of this parliamentary group is to encourage the Japanese government to promote environmental research and resource development in the Senkaku Islands through creating legislation for research and development in the islands.
尖閣諸島は歴史的にも国際法的にも我が国固有の領土であり、領土問題は存在しないというのが政府の立場です。
The Japanese government's position is that the Senkaku Islands are both historically and under international law an inherent territory of Japan, and that there exists no issue of territorial sovereignty.
しかし1969年に国連の調査で尖閣諸島周辺の海底に海洋資源が存在するという結果が報告されてから中国が領有権を主張し始めました。
However, China began claiming the Senkaku Islands after a United Nations study in 1969 reported the presence of marine resources on the seabed around the Senkaku Islands.
日本は1970年代までは政府として上陸をして調査をしていましたが、中国の抗議に摩擦を恐れて調査を中止をしています。
The Japanese government continued until the 1970s to conduct landings on the islands for research purposes. However, following protests from China stopped this, fearing friction.
11年前、民主党野田政権において、尖閣諸島の国有化に踏み切ったことから、中国の海警船が接続水域に侵入することが常態化し、月に数回、領海内にも侵入しています。
Since the decision to nationalize the Senkaku Islands was made 11 years ago during the Noda government of the Democratic Party of Japan, Chinese Coast Guard vessels have been regularly entering the adjacent waters and entering territorial waters several times each month.
中国は2021年に海警法を制定し、管轄海域に外国船が侵入すれば、法執行として、武器を用いた強制撤去ができると定めました。
In the year 2021, China enacted the Coast Guard law, which stipulates that if a foreign vessel enters waters under its jurisdiction, as a form of law enforcement, the vessel can be forcibly removed, including the use of arms.
中国は違法な国家権力の行使を正当化するための道具として、新たな法律を作ったのです。これでは法治国家とは言えません。
So China created this new law as a tool to justify the illegal use of state power. This cannot be said to be the acts of a state under the rule of law.
今回、石垣市の尖閣諸島周辺の環境調査の一環として、議連のメンバーも尖閣諸島海域に行きました。
So this time, the members of our parliamentary assembly also went to the waters around the Senkaku Islands as part of an environmental survey of the area, which was conducted by the city of Ishigaki.
漂流ゴミや生息する生物についての状況についての報告は、この後あると思いますが、私が実感したのは、中国の海警船が我が国領海内で法執行の形を作るために行動をし、日本の海上保安庁がしっかり領海を守るための努力を続けている実態です。
So I believe that there will be a report on the situation regarding both drifting marine garbage and also the species inhabiting the island following today. However, I would like to share that what I realized through this visit was the reality that the Chinese Coast Guard vessels are acting within our Japanese territorial waters as if to create or to act in a kind of law enforcement, and that the Japanese Coast Guard is continuing its thorough efforts to firmly protect our territorial waters.
非常に緊迫した状況にある現実を日本の国会議員は実際に見る必要があると思いました。その上で、海上保安庁の活動を法的にも予算面でも支援をしていきたいと思います。
And so this confirmed my belief that it is necessary for Japanese parliamentarians to actually see firsthand the reality of this very tense situation. And based upon this, we hope to then support the activities of the Japan Coast Guard, both through legislation and also through budgetary means.
また、石垣市の中山市長は、上陸して調査をすることを求めておられますので、その後押しもしてまいりたいと思っています。
Further, the mayor of the city of Ishigaki is also seeking or seeing the need for conducting surveys, including landing on the islands. And so we would like to also support the mayor's call for this.
最後に、私は決して反中国ではありません。戦略的互恵関係に基づき、共に東アジアの平和と安定に協力し、対話を続けるべきだと思っております。
I would like to conclude by saying that I am by no means anti-China. Rather, I believe that we should work together for the peace and stability of East Asia on the basis of strategic mutual or reciprocity, and also continue to pursue dialogue together.